I actually ended up spending an entire evening in A&E. Do I call an ambulance? I put the glass down so forcefully on the table that the whole glass shattered in my hand. Just pull yourself together, like, come on. And his childhood best friend went to my school. What are the chances of that? Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, welcome to another video. The first thing you're probably thinking is your hair looks like you've been electrocuted. Yeah, that's because I'm currently trying to not use any heat on it, so this is my completely natural hair. I haven't even dried it with a hairdryer, hence why it looks like this. I'm trying to get my natural curls to just be a little bit better, so we vibe, and I've just fitted the bill with the 80s style makeup as well, so yeah, we're vibing. However, now that we've got that out of the way, I'm back with another travel themed video, and you're probably thinking this is a little bit of a strange time to come at you with this kind of content because obviously we can't travel and we can't go anywhere really at all, and booking holidays is so up in the air that it's like, well, I don't really need to watch a video about this. However, considering that, it is still my most DM'd topic of all time. I get, I would say, at least 7 or 8 messages every single day from different people. I've done a video like this specifically for Australia, and I've done a video before about traveling cheaply. However, looking back, that was not the best video. And I also want to tell you some untold travel stories. Also, you guys on TikTok really were like, oh, we want to know more about this and this and this. So I thought, yeah, I'm gonna throw in a couple of anecdotes of things that happened whilst backpacking Australia that I haven't spoken about either very much or ever at all. Would you ever interrail around Europe? What would you say your favourite country in Europe has been that you've visited? This links me well to another question that was really frequently asked. I wouldn't interrail, I don't think, but I think now I'd rather just go to the European cities that I want to go to as like a holiday, just because if I was going to spend a lot of money on doing like a big trip, which interrailing can be quite a big trip, I think I would rather do it further afield. But I'm not completely off the idea, I just think I don't really have a plan to interrail. My favourite country in Europe is probably Italy. I think Italy is just a beautiful country. There's so much there as well, like you can really do a lot of different things, and yeah, there's just a lot of really gorgeous cities. Obviously it's got Rome, it's got Venice, it's got Florence, it's got Milan. Probably Italy or Greece. If you just want a good summer holiday, I think Greece is the best place for that. It's a little bit less popular than say Spain, for example. I think Spain has some beautiful places, some beautiful beaches, but I think Greece is like a beautiful, it's a stunning collection of islands. I just would always rather go to Greece or somewhere like that. So yeah, probably one of those two. My next question that a lot of people asked me was, I found your video to do with Australia and budgeting and traveling really useful, but could you talk about your trip to Italy? How did you fund it? How did you plan it? I know you did that completely on your own. A lot of people asking a roughly similar thing. If you don't know the trip that these people are talking about, when I finished my foundation year, me and my friend Eleanor actually went to Italy for around 2 weeks. I think it was like 13 days or somewhere around that point. We travelled the whole country, just the two of us. We went on a tour group, we just did it on the train, and it was amazing. It was so much fun, and we really saw a lot of Italy that way as well. Like even whilst traveling on the train, we were like seeing a lot of the countryside that we wouldn't see if we just stayed in one place or if we'd flown. So we started in Rome, and then we went to Florence, and then we went to Venice, and then we got the train all the way back from Venice to Rome, which took forever, but it was really fun. And we basically just booked the whole thing online, not a package. We didn't do anything like that. We just booked a load of different things. It was completely a mishmash, and there wasn't really a structure or an order to it. So like we stayed in an Airbnb when we were in Rome, and when we were in Venice we booked with Airbnb, but when we were in Florence we stayed in a hotel. We just weighed up what was cheapest, so everything was booked on either Airbnb or booking.com, and then the flights were booked separately, and we flew from the airport that we could find the cheapest flights from, so it wasn't either of our local airports. Like both of us would always opt to fly from either Leeds or Manchester. They're like our two kind of local. Manchester is not local, but it's like the biggest airport in the north. But we flew from East Midlands. Obviously it's not too much further, but that was just purely because it was the cheapest that we could find. So we really shopped around. Like I would say utilize the tools online that do the searching for you. So like Expedia and booking.com will compare all the prices. I didn't book the flights in the same package. I find it cheaper to book the flights separately, but a lot of people would rather have it all in one thing. And then as for the traveling within the country, we booked the trains whilst we were there. In hindsight, we could have done that cheaper, but we didn't really think about it too much. We kind of just got on a plane and went to Italy and hoped for the best. But That way it was also quite flexible because it meant we did a lot of day trips out to, like, we went on a day trip just to Lake Garda, we went on a day trip to Pisa. Because we didn't have anything set in stone, it kept it quite flexible. Do you not think that traveling by yourself is such a strain on your relationship? Do you feel like you've missed out, and does it cause tension? Good question. Personally for me, no. I've said this before, I think, but our relationship is very laid back in the sense that Tom just wants me to do whatever I want to do if it makes me happy. He wasn't that interested in traveling when I first met him. He's a lot more interested now because I think that I've kind of shown him a bit more like what there is out there. No, I don't think it's ever caused tension. Like, it does not really cause an argument. Obviously there's been times where I'm like, oh, I really want to go here, because Tom can't always just up and leave because he works a 9-to-5 job that you can't just get up and leave from. We're just quite laid back, and we're adults, so I feel like, you know, we're entitled to want separate things but still be able to make the relationship work. Okay, anecdote time. Somebody said, tell an untold story from Australia, and I think I touched on this in my Melbourne vlog, but I did brush over it because I didn't really feel like it fitted in the vlog. It just wasn't the vibe of the vlog. The first week that I was in Melbourne, I actually ended up spending an entire evening in A&E, and I spoke about this briefly, and it wasn't because of me. So we went clubbing, it was a bar crawl, and one of the guys we were with was really quite drunk, but we all were. Like, it was just, you know, the start of more to come, to be honest. It was just one long party being in Australia. We were up on the stage, this like raised platform in the nightclub, and he fell off it, but because he was drunk he didn't put his arms down, so he just whacked his head on the floor because he hadn't like really responded to the fact that he was falling off it. It's not funny actually. And at first we were like, oh, that's fine, because he stood straight up, and we were like, oh, he's obviously okay. And then within 10 minutes he was like, oh, I really can't move my neck, I've really hurt my neck. And obviously, like, neck injuries and head injuries are so serious, and like I feel like my mum instinct kicked in, and I was like suddenly not drunk at all anymore, even though I was. All my wits were about me, and I was like, right, how seriously do you mean you can't like turn your head, because that's quite a worry? And he was like, no, really, this is hurting me. So I was like, right, well, let's go to the hospital. And funnily enough, during the day, I don't even know why, it's like I had a premonition. I'd checked out where the local hospital was, and this is never something I do. I'm not one of those people that arrives in a foreign country and like locates their nearest bank and their nearest pharmacy, even though you should do that. I'm just, as I said in my last Q&A, I'm quite blasé. I'm like, ah, it'll be fine. And that's my attitude in life, which is probably a bit of a concern. But just by coincidence, I'd been like, oh, where would I need to go if I needed to go to hospital? Weird, don't know why I'd thought it. So I'd already mentally seen the hospital, and I knew that we were quite close to it. So I was like, we don't need to call an ambulance, because obviously it costs money to call an ambulance when you're abroad. Everything just meant that we wanted to avoid anything that would cost a claim on insurance. So we got an Uber to the hospital, and I booked this Uber, and I got some of the other girls that I was with to come with me. Bear in mind, I'd only known this guy like 5 days. None of us were particularly coherent. We arrived at A&E and we went to the desk, and they were like, can you explain what's happened? And all of us were quite drunk. They could tell that we were drunk, and he'd hurt himself. It was embarrassing, but also so glad that we did go, because he actually ended up having to stay in the hospital overnight because of the injury on his neck and on his head, and they had to like keep him in to just check on him, and he was fine. Like, ultimately he was fine, and he was laughing and stuff, but it was actually quite scary. Like, I've never even been to hospital in this country. I've never, touch wood, been to A&E, and then 5 days into this Melbourne trip, I was stood outside a club debating, do I call an ambulance? Bottom line was, he was fine, but also, if you hurt your head and if you injure yourself whilst you're abroad, make sure you're with people that will hopefully look after you. That was the first thing that I don't think I really discussed in the vlogs, because it just felt like it didn't fit, and obviously it was kind of his story to tell, but it was just quite a lot of drama. Tips for planning your first trip without parents. Okay, this is a good one. The first place I actually went without my mum and dad was Paris when I was 17, but there were other adults on that trip. The first real place I went without a parent or a guardian of any kind was New York, and I think that's quite a bold move, and looking back I don't know why I did that. Yeah, it's a bit daunting, but we were fine. We were completely fine. I would say check everything thoroughly, because we didn't, and when we got there we did come a bit unstuck. But also it's part of the learning process. Like, don't go to a travel agent. If you sit in a travel agent and you're 18, they'll rip you off, because they know that you don't really know too much about how much things cost. Also, if you're regularly looking at flights from the same IP address, the flights will go up. You can turn your IP address off, or if you can search using different browsers or on different computers. My top tip would be thorough. Don't go somewhere that you're gonna feel really out of your depth if something does go wrong. So New York, the advantage is they speak English. Or somewhere that you feel like you could get home quickly if you needed to. So Europe is obviously only a couple of hours away. Is Disneyland actually worth the money and the hype? Yes, in my opinion. A lot of people don't like Disney. A lot of people, Disney is not their thing. That's totally fine. Disney is my thing, so I do think it's worth the money. I've had some of the best memories of my life at Disney World Florida and at Disney Paris, although I'm gonna say I have never paid for a trip to Disney Florida. It is expensive. I've obviously contributed in terms of booking a package holiday to Florida. I've never done that, but I have booked to go to Paris, and it is still expensive, but it is obviously cheaper than going to America. And I think personally it is worth it. I think you could ask anybody that's been to Disney, they will say that the experience and the memories are worth the price. There's so many things to think about, but essentially yes, it is worth the money. Ways to budget for holidays. This is my thing that I always say, but I'll say it again. Whatever the holiday costs you, have that saved up again. So say you go on a holiday to Paris for the weekend and it costs you £400 for the flights and the hotel. Have £400 to spend once you get there. Sometimes they'll charge you like a nightly tax to stay in the hotel, so that could be like 60-70 euros. Food obviously is the main one, spending money, anything that you want tickets to. So if you go to Paris, you might want to go up the Eiffel Tower. Like, these things are not free, so I would say whatever the cost is, have it again. Best airline to travel with. I'm a bit controversial, but I genuinely think Ryanair are the best airline to travel Europe with, because they're always the cheapest and I've never had an issue with them. I think that I've actually had more issues flying with Jet2 than I have had flying with Ryanair. And yes, okay, the planes are old and they're rickety and it's cramped, but like, if you're only going to Europe, you're not gonna be on that plane for more than 3 or 4 hours anyway, so do you need to complain about it? Like, if you're going on a budget, Ryanair or EasyJet. If you're traveling to America, I would always book with Virgin Atlantic. Again, it depends on when you're flying and where you're flying from. Did you have any bad experiences with sleeping or hostels and noise / tell any untold hostel stories? Okay, in answer to your first question, I actually didn't have issues sleeping because I was always exhausted, which really helped. But I also took earbuds, earpods. What are those things called? The things that you put in your ears to block out the noise. Earbuds. Don't know what they're called, they've just gone out my head. Them things, these. And the next untold hostel story. Alright, so I'm gonna tell the one I told on TikTok. This isn't specifically hostel related, but it is Australia related. So I posted this to TikTok. I apologise if you've already seen it, but I do feel as though my audience on here are not the same as on TikTok. Comment down below, do you follow me on TikTok? Do you watch my TikTok? Anyway, so whilst I was backpacking, I did a 3-day excursion to the Whitsundays. This is the Whitsundays, the most beautiful place on this earth. However, if you've watched the vlogs, you will know that I really injured my arm. I think I dislocated my elbow, but because we were in the middle of the ocean, there was absolutely nothing that I could do about this. I have never felt pain like this, right? The perk of doing it with a tour is that there is always a trained paramedic with you, or like, you know, somebody that can help you. Went to the medic and I sat down and he was like seeing to me and he was just talking to me, asking me questions, you know, the regular kind of questions, and he asked me where I was from. So I said, I'm from East Yorkshire, it's quite small. Not a lot of people have heard of it. Bear in mind, this guy is Australian. People in the UK seem to like have trouble locating where East Yorkshire is. So I was like, you probably won't have heard of it. It's kind of near Leeds, which is always my reference point. And he went, oh no, I've heard of East Yorkshire. My childhood friend actually grew up there. Whereabouts do you live? Like, where are you from? So I was like, oh, I'm from a really small town called Beverley. Now, if you're from this area, Beverley's a pretty tiny market town. Not a lot goes on here. Again, followed it with, kind of near Hull. And he went, oh, I know Beverley, my childhood friend actually grew up there, like in that town. And I was like, yeah, that's where I live, that's so bizarre. And he was like, no way, what school did you go to? And I named my school, and his childhood best friend went to my school. My mind is blown. Like, I can't even stress to you enough how much of a small place this town is. Like, it's so bizarre. I was like, what? I literally said to him, are you sure? Because I was just like, he's messing with me. Anyway, he pulled their Facebook up, and they were about 6 years older than me, so I didn't recognise them. But when I went on their Facebook, obviously I had a few mutual friends, and I recognised their brother, and I was like, oh my god, that is so bizarre. Like, I'm sitting here floating in a boat in the middle of the ocean off the east coast of Australia with a paramedic who happens to know the school I went to because his best friend went there too. What are the chances of that? Like, you're telling me that that's a coincidence? No, it's not. Like, I just can't believe it. It just made me feel like the world is such a small place and you're only ever a handful of people away from home. Because had I not have injured my arm, I would never have had that conversation. I would never have found that out. And it just makes me believe in the fact that everything happens for a reason, and I don't know what the reason is all the time, but it was just too weird. Trying to answer ones that I haven't previously answered. So if you think I'm answering quite random ones, I recommend you watch my big old Australia Q&A that I uploaded at the start of the first lockdown, which feels like a lifetime ago. Okay, this is a good one. How do you plan a UK weekend away? How do you find places to visit? There's a lot of towns and cities that I've been to, either on weekends away / with YouTube, or because I've got friends that either live there or go to university there. That is usually how I start. So Tom and I do weekends away quite a lot to either places I've previously been that I've liked. So we went to Bath we've been to Liverpool and Manchester, we've been to Durham, we've been just to such random places, loads of places in the Yorkshire Dales, the Peak District, just places that I know that I will like. I know that sounds a bit odd, but I know that I like towns like York and like Bath that are like old and have something about them and they've got a bit of history, and you could find a cute cottage or a really gorgeous Airbnb, and I think I'm pretty savvy when it comes to finding Airbnbs. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So usually it's just either places I've been that I like or places I've seen on Instagram or on YouTube. Been to Brighton a couple of times purely because I've seen it on YouTube so many times that I was like, oh, I want to go there myself. I've been to Edinburgh because I've watched other people's vlogs of being in Edinburgh, so I do think that social media has influenced that a lot. But in more recent years, it is just based off where my friends have been at university. And again, I would always book with booking.com or with Airbnb. And then either get the train, or more often than not now, Tom and I would just drive ourselves there. Ooh, this is a good one. Where would be your dream honeymoon destination? I have a few. Depends really. I kind of like the idea of getting married abroad. Honeymoon destination that springs to mind is the Maldives. I think the Maldives looks beautiful, and it's not the kind of place I would go just for a holiday, I don't think. I might change my mind on that. If you see me in the Maldives, don't question it. But I think it's a little bit far to go just for a beach holiday when you can have beautiful beach holidays closer to home. Same with Bora Bora, but they're so expensive. Tom likes the idea of doing an American road trip if we got married, which I'm not against. I just don't know if I'd want to do it as my honeymoon. But I do think it's kind of cool, like the from coast to coast across America. And then I also am not against the idea of Disney World. Like, Disney Florida holds such a special place in my heart that I wouldn't be mad. Okay, quick little interlude from me. Different setting, different hair, different day. I was talking to my friend Tegan on Instagram last night, and I told her that I'd filmed this video, and I was like, I feel like I've forgotten some of the best things that happened, like some of the funniest stories. And she listed off a few, some of which I've mentioned, some of which are more like inside jokes. But this one, I cannot believe I forgot it, so I just have to slot it in here because, oh my god guys, this honestly sounds like something that just would not happen, but it literally did, and I'm gonna tell it on Tegan's behalf as well because it happened to both of us. Buckle yourselves in, like, this was rogue. It wasn't that deep, it was just bloody disgusting, to be honest. We were on an excursion tour of the Whitsundays. Every evening they provided food and all the other stuff. It was amazing. They had some incredible meals and all of this stuff. Anyway, this one specific night they'd put out a plate of desserts, and they were like brownies, and it was delicious. And then about an hour later, I went back down under the deck because the kitchen was kind of like underneath, and I went to get another brownie with Tegan. We both were like, oh, should we have another? Yeah, let's have another. So we had another, we went down, we got it, we came back up and started eating them above deck. And I kid you not, this is up there with one of the most disgusting moments that I have ever experienced. Without looking at the brownie, I just bit into it. I was mid-conversation, I was talking to my friends, I hadn't like inspected it, I just picked it up off the side. And I took a bite out of it. And I was like, oh, this is bizarre. Like, it didn't taste the same as the one I'd just eaten, but I just carried on my conversation. I was just having a chat. And my throat felt all like weird, like tickly when I swallowed it. And it felt like just what I know now to be crawling. At the time, I thought my throat just felt weird until I felt this same tickly sensation on my hand. The hand I was holding the brownie in. I looked down at the brownie and it is covered, this actually makes me want to be sick thinking about it, in flies. And I mean like covered in flies. I mentioned this briefly in my vlog and everyone was like, that didn't happen, that would never happen. But don't forget that on boats, if you leave food unattended under deck, there are quite often like maggots and stuff like that. That's just what happens on boats. I don't think it's rare. It wasn't that the boat wasn't clean. It was just that the food had been standing for an hour, maybe two, and it hadn't been covered over at all. Anyway, I looked down at this brownie and it's covered in like crawling things. It looks like a scene off I'm a Celebrity. And my instinct kicks in. I yeet this brownie across the boat, and Tegan looks at me and she's like, why have you just thrown the brownie? And I was like, like making a fuss. I was being dramatic. Everybody was looking at me.
That right there is where Molly launched her brownie. That's where she dropped it. And then that's Molly.
A bit embarrassing, to be honest. I had thrown this and everybody was staring at me. I ran back under the deck and spat out this bite that was in my mouth, and I was like, oh my god, Tegan, I just bit into this and it's covered in flies. And you could see it like on the deck when I dropped it, all the flies had like kind of gone off it. Oh my god, actually thinking about it makes me want to vom. Basically, Tegan then came inside, but Tegan had already eaten the whole brownie. I don't know if hers was smaller than mine or she'd just eaten it quicker, or like, you know how you can kind of almost get away with putting a whole brownie in your mouth and eating it like that? Anyway, she'd eaten it all, and she was like, oh my god, that's disgusting, that's disgusting. And we looked at the plate that we'd got it off, and the plate was covered in bugs. And Tegan went and made herself throw up. I'm severely emetophobic, so I was not going to do that. I'd let Tegan go do that. I was like, okay, if you can hack that, off you go. So Tegan sicked it back out again. My theory was, what will kill the bugs? Because I literally felt them in my throat and I didn't realise that was what it was until after. So I decided to boil the kettle and drink pretty much boiling water as hot as I could physically swallow, because in my head that would kill the bugs. Honestly, it was a whole drama. By this point everybody on the boat was like, oh my god, what's going on? And the food had been thrown away and everybody was like, are you okay? And I was absolutely fine. I was just overreacting. But similarly, it was bloody disgusting, and it is up there with one of the weirdest things that happened on the trip. And one of the funniest memories, when Tegan was voice noting me and she told me it, we were both just in stitches because I just can't believe I forgot it. Tegan calls it the bug brownie incident, and between the two of us we didn't stop talking about it for like the rest of the time we were there, because it was just absolutely rats, to be honest. So yeah, be careful what you eat off a boat. If the food's been left out, not covered over for 2 hours, and you're on the ocean, an ocean in the dark where flies are really low over the water and they're in the cabin, just don't eat the food without looking at it, because tried and tested, don't recommend it. Back to the video. Okay, this is one I really want to answer, because even though I think I've spoke about it before, it's such a misconception. How on earth did you manage to get your mum's Christmas present to New York City so cheap? Guys, New York does not have to be expensive. I think people think that it costs an arm and a leg to get to New York, and it actually doesn't. I shared this on my Instagram story the other day. If you look at the right time of year, so for example, January, February, March are the cheapest months of the year to go to New York because it's cold. Just for fun, I regularly look at flights because I'm that kind of person. Also the kind of person that regularly looks at Rightmove, so you know, you get a sense of my personality. And the other day I was looking and I came across flights return from Heathrow to JFK for £300. That's not costing you an arm and a leg. You can save up that kind of money. That doesn't sound like a holiday that's going to break the bank. And then it's totally on where you stay. So obviously if you want to stay in Manhattan, it's going to cost you a little bit more than if you want to stay further out or in Brooklyn. I think people think it costs a lot because it has this perception of the glamour and the glitz and the money that comes with New York, but it doesn't have to be like that. And I think once you're there, even, you can do it cheap. You can do it on a budget. Broadway, if you want to go see a musical, they release tickets every single day. If you're savvy, you can queue up, you can get tickets at the box office in the morning for a lot cheaper. It's about being savvy. What type of luggage do you book? Like cabin or hold for a small trip or a weekend trip abroad? Hand luggage. You don't need 7 suitcases. I see so many people on my social media that go away for like 4 days and they've got 2 suitcases, and I think, what have you got in there? Like, what are you taking? And I know that it's slightly different if you're like a fashion influencer, because you get changed a lot and you want loads of photos in different outfits, and I see the appeal to that, like I really do. But I think if you're trying to budget, and if you're like the normal average person that's not going to take 78 Instagrams in one location, you can do it in a hand luggage bag. And I could probably do a 5-day holiday out of one of those bags. The issue with hand luggage only is the liquid allowance, which isn't the easiest thing to do, but the way I generally tend to do that, and this isn't particularly helpful, I know, because it's not the most sustainable version of this, but I will take the bare essentials, and anything that I can't fit I buy once I'm through security, and then I just buy all the stuff that I can't fit. So like sun cream, I'll buy it once I'm through security, or even once I'm there in the location, because then that's even cheaper. I would just buy it and then I would leave it in the hotel room. I know that's not great, but that is one way around it. That is genuinely one way around it, and I don't do that every single time. Okay, I want to do one more travel story that I haven't told. Did I tell the Sydney Opera House one? I don't think I did. I don't know what I haven't told. Basically, I went to the Opera House, you know, that kind of famous landmark, and everyone was like, oh, shall we get a drink? Let's go like to this really nice bar, because it has an Opera House bar. I'd had quite a lot to drink. I'd had an entire bottle of wine. My issue with my Australia trip was I was just constantly dehydrated. It's so hot there that I was so dehydrated. I hydrated myself with alcohol, which wasn't good. I put the glass down so forcefully on the table that the whole glass shattered in my hand. Like the bottom of the glass came off and the top of the glass smashed. I don't even know how it happened because I'm not particularly strong. It's not like I was crushing it, you know? And I was just mortified, but it was also the funniest thing in the world because obviously I was quite drunk. But imagine, actually imagine, I take myself to the Sydney Opera House, smashing a glass in the Sydney Opera House, and then just sitting there laughing at it. I was mortified when I thought about it the next day. I was like, oh my god, that's so embarrassing. Like, it's just not funny. And there are some videos of us walking back from that said incident. I'll put them on the screen.
I could not resist you, Mamma Mia.
And we were just having the best time. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, I can't believe that I've only been to that landmark once properly and that's what happened to me while I was there. Like, just pull yourself together. Like, come on. Good times, and I hope that they don't mind and that they replace the glass. I'm really sorry. The staff were really nice. They came and cleaned it up and took it away and asked if I was okay, and I was fine. Oh, this is a good one. Did you start traveling for content or just because you want to? Just because I wanted to. This is not something that I'm doing just for content at all. God, if it was that, I would have gone to a little bit more glamorous places. I probably wouldn't have stayed in hostels. Yeah, I don't even really know. Do people think that it was just for YouTube? I hope you don't, because it's a real genuine passion that I've pretty much always had since I was probably 16. It's really been on my radar of something that I wanted to do. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 more. What do you think about the environmental impacts of traveling? What do you do to offset your emissions? Okay, so this is an interesting one, and I got a lot of comments about this when I went to Australia, because obviously, like, it is bad for the environment. It is something I speak about on my channel. However, there are airlines, Emirates are one of them, or it might have been Qantas, because I booked it all through Qantas and then they like divided the flight, where when you book your tickets you can pay to offset your carbon emissions that you're generating by going on that flight. So for me, I think it was like another £200 or £300, and I actually did pay it because I thought, yeah, it's a long flight. I feel like a bit guilty about this, and it just helps. And basically what that means is the company will then pay for X amount of trees or whatever to be planted to offset the emissions that their airlines are creating. So I think it does depend who you book with and if they're like savvy and like in that kind of world. So I'm not too sure if you could do it with Ryanair, although you can probably go and do it personally through a separate website. I'm desperate to travel and I want to see the world, but then you do have to think about those impacts and those things. If everybody had the attitude of, oh well, the flight will go even if I'm not on it, nothing would change. This is a long video. How on earth did you plan your trip to Iceland? Iceland was probably the hardest trip I've ever had to book because the country is so different to anywhere I've ever been. There aren't a lot of places to stay. Tom and I didn't want to stay in Reykjavik, which is the capital of Iceland. We wanted to stay in Keflavik, which is a small town, tiny town, because it's near the Blue Lagoon, and we only went for 3 days, and kind of the main reason we went was like to go to the Blue Lagoon. And there are a lot of beautiful things that you could do that we didn't. I wanted to see the Northern Lights. I would have loved to have seen like the volcanoes, but we didn't do any of that. We just went to have like a luxurious stay, but finding a hotel that was like a nice hotel was difficult. However, I think if you're wanting to do it on a budget and stay in a cheap hotel, there probably are quite a lot, but we did this as like a birthday trip, and it wasn't easy. There's literally about 6 hotels in the whole town. If you're going to Iceland and you want to stay in the capital, I imagine it would be easier. But yeah, then we booked the Blue Lagoon separately and we booked onto a bus. Transport around the country is not ideal either. They just don't have very much public transport. They don't have trains, or not really very many, and not public trains really. Everything was just so sparse and few and far between. Like if you missed the bus, you would just stay there for the whole day. Beautiful country though, like such a beautiful country, so different to anywhere else I've been. Okay, I'm actually gonna end this video because my camera just cut out. I've been talking for such a long time. However, I'm gonna end on one final untold story about being in Australia. That I've definitely never told this story. During the first week that I was there, I was sitting in a restaurant with the people that I'd met. I think I'd met them that morning. We hadn't started any group tours. In fact, it was the very first day I was there, and I was in Melbourne. There was like a whole crowd of people walking past, and I was like, what are they doing? Like, I just felt like it was a bit bizarre. They were like paparazzi, and I didn't really know too much about Australia's like famous scene. Like I didn't know who lived in Melbourne. I didn't know really what to expect, because obviously if you go to London, you kind of go in the back of your mind with the thought that you could see a celebrity. This paparazzi like cohort go past, and like people are like shouting and stuff, and I was just like, I don't really know what's going on. And then Ruby Rose walked past, who I actually did not know who she was, and I felt like the only person in the world to not know who she was. I'm still not entirely sure, but when I googled her, she was pretty darn famous. And probably a lot of you guys watching this are like, I can't believe that you don't know who she is. And I know in my head I was like, oh, that might ring a bell, like I do sort of recognise her. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, like I really want a picture with her. The paparazzi were just following her as she walked down the street, and she was just walking, and I was like, I literally can't believe that she's like quite a famous, apparently A-list celebrity. I just walked down the street, and we've all just stayed sitting here eating our pizza that we're having in this cheap pizza bar. I didn't know what to expect. It was the very first day I arrived in Australia. A lot had happened in those 24 hours, and Ruby Rose walked past. And I'm pretty sure that is most of the story times that I haven't told. Obviously there are a couple of others, like when I was literally mugged and had my purse stolen, but I did tell that story in the Australia vlog, so I'm not going to rehash it. I think most of the ones I've told just now I either haven't told in depth or I haven't mentioned before. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about my experience travelling, and some of this might have been helpful. I do appreciate appreciate it. But yeah, let me know if you have any trips booked for, like, dare I say this year, maybe next year, or if you have any plans, even if they're not booked, because I have a lot of stuff planned but nothing is booked because I daren't set anything in stone. Let me know if you do have anything booked or what you're planning if you don't in the comments down below. And if you do have any questions that I haven't answered, if you think I haven't answered them here or in my previous Australia Q&A, which I will leave linked down below, you can leave them in the comments and I will try and get back to as many of you as possible. So thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this video was so long. Give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it and you found it helpful, and I shall be back on my channel on Thursday. Bye guys!